When people hear the word deviance, they usually think of extreme examples such as crime, violence, and other serious offending. Howard Becker challenged this way of thinking by asking a much simpler question: who decides what counts as deviant? Rather than treating deviance as something that exists inherently within particular individuals and behaviours, Becker argued that deviance is produced through social interaction. What matters most is not the act itself, but how others interpret it, respond to it, and label it. Approaching sociology from the symbolic interactionist tradition, Becker focused on everyday interactions, language, and meaning. He was less interested in why people break rules, focusing instead on how those rules are made, how they are enforced, and what happens to people once they are defined as rule breakers. This approach led him to rethink deviance as a product of social processes rather than an objective property waiting to be discovered. In Outsiders, Becker makes his most influential claim. Deviance is not a quality of the act the person commits, but rather a consequence of the application by others of rules and sanctions to an offender. The deviant is one to whom that label has successfully been applied. Deviant behaviour is behaviour that people so label. This statement directly challenges common sense approaches to deviance, which assume that deviance is an objective property of certain acts. For Becker, there is nothing inherently deviant in any behaviour itself. Acts only become deviant through social interaction. Rules are created by social groups, they are enforced unevenly and applied selectively. As a result, deviance is best understood as a social definition rather than a fixed and objective category. From this perspective, what counts as deviance varies across time, place, and social setting. The same behaviour may be tolerated, ignored, or even celebrated in one context, while being condemned and punished in another. Becker illustrates this by noting that activities such as drinking alcohol, gambling, and drug use are treated very differently across societies and historical periods. This variability demonstrates that deviance cannot be explained simply by reference to the act itself. Instead, sociologists must examine who is doing the defining, which rules matter, and who has the power to enforce them. A key concept in Becker's work is labelling. Labelling theory examines the process through which individuals are publicly identified and classified as deviant. Importantly, not everyone who breaks a rule is labelled. Rule breaking is widespread, but only some individuals are caught, defined as offenders, and subjected to sanctions. Becker therefore distinguishes between rule-breaking behaviour and the application of a deviant label. Factors such as class, ethnicity, age, and visibility can all influence who is more likely to be labelled. Once a deviant label is applied, it can have profound consequences. Labels tend to be sticky. They shape how others interpret a person's actions and how institutions respond to them. Ordinary behaviour may be reinterpreted through the lens of the label, reinforcing the idea that the person is that kind of individual. Over time, labelled individuals may find themselves becoming stigmatised and excluded from conventional social roles, increasing their likelihood of engaging in further deviant behaviour. Becker describes this process as the formation of a deviant career. A deviant career does not begin with the deviant act, but instead with the social reaction to it. The initial label results in stigma, marginalisation, and reduced opportunities, which in turn make continued deviance more likely. Individuals may come to accept the deviant identity as part of their sense of self. In this way, deviance is produced and sustained by social processes. It isn't simply discovered. Becker developed these ideas through his study of marijuana users, conducted at a time when cannabis use was widely regarded as inherently dangerous and morally suspicious. Instead of treating drug use as simply the production of chemical effects, Becker examined how people actually learned to become users. He showed that marijuana use involves a process of social learning. New users often do not experience the expected effects at first. Through interaction with more experienced users, they learn how to smoke the drug effectively, how to identify specific sensations, and how to differentiate those sensations from anxiety and discomfort. Over time, users learn to define these sensations as desirable and enjoyable. This research allowed Becker to demonstrate that the experience of drug use depends on shared meanings within a group. The effects of marijuana are not simply felt, they are recognized and interpreted within a social setting. Becker used this case to illustrate how behavior comes to be understood as deviant through learning, interaction, and group norms, rather than through biology alone. Jazz musicians were often viewed by the wider public as irresponsible and morally questionable due to their working hours, their association with drugs, and their nonconformist lifestyles. Becker showed that these behaviours were closely tied to the practical conditions of the occupation. Late nights, informal socialising, and irregular working patterns were normal features of professional jazz work. They were not signs of deviance. Within the musician's own social world, such behaviour was normal and unremarkable. By comparing wider social judgments with musicians' own understandings, Becker demonstrated that deviance arises from common sense assumptions rather than from behaviour itself. By comparing wider social judgments with musicians' own understandings, Becker demonstrated that deviance arises from common sense assumptions rather than as an inherent part of the behaviour itself. The example of jazz musicians highlights how occupational cultures can clash with dominant social norms and lead to labelling and misunderstanding. By studying both cannabis users and jazz musicians, Becker demonstrated that deviance is not about behaviour alone. It is about meaning, interpretation, and social reactions. His work instructs us as sociologists to ensure that our focus remains on social processes. Instead of asking, why do people break rules, Becker invites us to ask, how do some people come to be defined as rule breakers at all?